Welcome to Empathy Stories, where inspiring tales of courage and kindness come alive. Today, discover the heartwarming journey of Ethan, a resilient boy who found unexpected friendship and a loving home after meeting a lonely stranger on a park bench. Get ready to be moved by a story of empathy, connection, and the transformative power of human kindness. It's a brisk autumn afternoon in Chicago. The air is sharp with the tang of fallen leaves, their yellow and red hues carpeting the streets and sidewalks in a patchwork quilt of color. There's a certain melancholy to the season, as if everything, even the world around us, is quietly preparing for a long, introspective winter. And for Liam, a small, 11-year-old boy with wide, searching eyes, this melancholy seems to echo in the very marrow of his bones. Liam is no stranger to solitude. He spent most of his young life in the warmth of an orphanage, a place more functional than nurturing, where laughter was often a rare guest, and smiles. Even more so, the orphanage is housed in a centuries-old building, its walls steeped in the quiet hum of untold stories. The corridors echo with the creak of wooden floorboards, a constant reminder of how little changes in this place. How time seems to linger and fade together. Most children in the orphanage have parents, or at least someone who is supposed to care for them. Liam does not. He was just a boy when his mother and father were killed in a car accident, a horrific, sudden event that shattered his world. Since that day, Liam has been a boy without a family, a boy who, it seemed, could not be loved. He had tried. Oh, how he tried to be good, to be seen. He helped around the orphanage, washing dishes, making his bed without being asked, doing whatever he could to be the child who would be picked. But the whispers from the other children stung, like invisible cuts, leaving him bruised but never broken. He's too quiet, they would say. No one wants a boy like him. And those words hung around him like the very air, thick and suffocating, making him feel smaller with each passing day. Liam had learned to be invisible, to blend into the background, so that perhaps he might escape the cruelty of their judgment. It was on one such afternoon, while the wind rustled the trees outside the orphanage's cracked windows, that Liam made a decision. He was going to leave, just for a little while, escape the suffocating presence of the orphanage for the freedom of the outside world. He had noticed the park across the street. It wasn't much, really, just a small patch of green between the concrete of the city and the steel of the buildings. But to Liam, it represented an entire universe of possibility, a place where he could be alone, away from the prying eyes of the other children and the pitying gazes of the adults. So, he slipped out unnoticed, his footsteps soft against the cracked pavement as he made his way across the street. The park was quiet, save for the rustling of leaves and the occasional chirp of a bird. Liam wandered among the trees, their branches swaying in the breeze. He found a bench beneath an old oak, its bark thick and gnarled with age. He sat there for a long while, watching the world go by in the most solitary way, detached, as if he was a mere observer to the lives of others. The noise of the city seemed to dull here, and for the first time in a long while, Liam felt at peace. It was then he noticed him, an older man, perhaps in his late 50s, sat alone on the far side of the park. His face was lined with age, but there was something in his posture that spoke of a deeper weariness, of someone who had known great sorrow and loss. His shoulders were slumped, his hands clasped loosely in his lap, and his eyes were focused on the ground in front of him, as though he was searching for something he had lost but could never find. Liam watched him for a moment, unsure if he should approach. He had learned to keep to himself, not to intrude on others. But something about the man's sadness felt familiar, an echo of his own. It was as though, for just a moment, the world had shrunk to the two of them, two souls lost in their own quiet loneliness. Tentatively, Liam stood up and walked toward the man. His footsteps were hesitant, each one uncertain, as though he feared disturbing the fragile peace of this strange encounter. When he was close enough, he stopped, and after a moment, the man raised his eyes. There was no judgment in his gaze, no condescension, only a deep, quiet sorrow. like the sea before a storm. "Are you okay?" Liam asked, his voice barely a whisper, as if the simple act of speaking might shatter the moment. The man looked at him for a long time before speaking. His voice was gravelly, yet soft. "I suppose I am," he said, almost as if he were trying to convince himself. "But I've been better." Liam sat down beside him, not asking for permission, but simply doing so. He didn't need to speak. Somehow, he felt that silence would be enough for them both. They sat there for what felt like hours, the city around them bustling, but the park and the space they shared felt frozen in time. "I'm Liam," he said eventually, his words tentative, unsure of how to form a connection with someone who seemed so far removed from his own world. The man nodded slowly. "I'm Robert," he replied, his eyes never leaving the horizon, as if the distant view might hold some secret that he had yet to uncover. They spoke very little, but the quiet was not uncomfortable. There was a strange understanding between them, as though both had known the sharp sting of loss and understood the space it created in their hearts. Robert didn't ask questions about Liam's past, nor did Liam ask about Robert's. There was no need. The air between them was thick with an unspoken recognition, two people bound by a similar kind of pain. And for the first time in what felt like forever, Liam didn't feel so alone. The weeks that followed were marked by a quiet companionship between Liam and Robert. They met often in the park, though their meetings were never planned. Each time, it seemed as though the world, in its vastness, had conspired to bring them together in this small, unremarkable corner of Chicago. It wasn't a friendship born of conversation or common interests. It was something more visceral, more profound, rooted in the silent understanding of two souls who had been broken by life. Liam came to look forward to their time together. Robert never asked questions about his life at the orphanage, nor did Liam inquire about Robert's past. The unspoken rule between them was that neither would delve too deeply into the scars they carried. And yet, there was an undeniable bond, as if each was a mirror to the other, reflecting the pain they had both endured. One afternoon, as the golden light of late afternoon bathed the park in a warm glow, Robert brought something new to their quiet ritual. He arrived with a small leather-bound book, its edges worn from age. "I thought you might like this," Robert said, offering the book to Liam with a gentle smile. Liam took the book, running his fingers along its weathered cover. "What is it?" "It's a collection of poems," Robert explained, his voice thoughtful. "I've read it many times, but maybe it'll mean something to you, too." Liam opened the book and began to read. The words were old, some of them written in a language that felt distant and foreign. Yet somehow, each poem seemed to speak directly to him. It was as if the poet had written these lines just for him, capturing the isolation, the yearning, the quiet desperation that often seemed to define his life. He felt a strange stirring in his chest, an emotion he couldn't quite name. "It's beautiful," Liam said softly, his voice almost lost in the breeze. Robert nodded. "It is. Poetry has a way of speaking to things that words alone can't quite capture. I think we all carry our own poetry inside us, our experiences, our pain, our hopes. But sometimes, we need someone else's words to help us understand our own." Liam sat with the book open in his lap, letting the words wash over him. Robert, sensing the weight of the moment, didn't speak. He simply sat beside him, allowing the quiet to settle between them, comfortable in its weight. For the first time in his life, Liam felt as though someone understood the pain he kept hidden from the world. It wasn't that Robert had made it go away, no, the ache of loss, the emptiness of abandonment, was still there, but with Robert, it seemed to have found a place to rest, somewhere it wasn't alone. Days passed, and with them, the bond between them grew. They spoke more now, though the conversations were never forced. It was as if each time they met, they unlocked a little more of the world inside each other. Robert shared stories from his youth, tales of a life that seemed far removed from Liam's, a life filled with love, loss, and the kind of joy that only seemed to exist in memories. But his stories were never told with bitterness or regret. Rather, they were shared with a quiet reverence, as if Robert had made peace with the past in a way that Liam couldn't yet understand. One afternoon, after a particularly long silence between them, Liam asked, "How did you end up here, Robert?" "In the park." "I mean." Robert looked at him for a long moment, as though weighing how much to reveal. Finally, he spoke, his voice low, as though speaking to himself more than to Liam. "I used to have a family, a wife, 2 children. We were happy. At least, I thought we were." He paused, and for the first time, Liam saw a flicker of something in Robert's eyes, something raw, something unhealed. But then one day, they were just gone. A car accident, like yours. In the blink of an eye, everything changed, and I couldn't fix it. I couldn't bring them back. Liam didn't know what to say. He had never known a pain like that. But something in Robert's voice resonated with him. He could feel the weight of those words, the depth of the grief that had marked Robert's life. "I'm sorry," Liam said quietly, not knowing what else to offer. Robert nodded slowly, a faint smile playing at the corners of his lips. "It's not something you get over, Liam. It's something you learn to live with. The world doesn't stop for you when you're broken, but you find a way to keep going, even when it feels impossible." Liam felt a deep pang in his chest, the words striking him in a way he hadn't expected. He had always believed that the pain he carried was something that defined him, that kept him from truly living. But now, in the company of this man, this stranger who had lost everything, Liam realized that perhaps pain wasn't something that should be avoided, but something to be understood, something that could make him stronger, if only he knew how to navigate it. In the weeks that followed, Liam's visits to the park became more frequent. He started bringing his own collection of poems, his own words, ones that he had written in secret, never sharing them with anyone. They were raw, unpolished, like his soul. But when he read them to Robert, they seemed to find a home in the old man's heart. Robert listened with the same quiet reverence he had shown toward the poets in his own book. "You have a gift, Liam," he said one day, his voice sincere. "These words, they're yours. They're part of you." Liam felt his heart swell with something unfamiliar. For the first time in his life, someone had seen him, not the quiet boy from the orphanage, not the child they ignored, but the person he was becoming, the boy he was learning to be. And, for the first time in his life, he didn't feel so alone. As the days turned into weeks, Liam's visits to the park became a constant in his life. Robert, with his quiet wisdom and patient heart, had become more than just a stranger with a shared past. He had become a beacon in Liam's otherwise tumultuous world. The young man had begun to see Robert as something like a father, an anchor, something he had never truly had. For the first time, Liam could imagine the possibility of a future where he was more than just an orphan, a future where he could build something of his own. One cool afternoon, as the autumn leaves fluttered to the ground like quiet confetti, Robert invited Liam to sit with him on a bench near the pond. The sound of water lapping gently against the rocks filled the air, and the world seemed to hold its breath as Robert spoke, his voice softer than usual, weighed down by something unsaid. "Liam," Robert began, his eyes on the horizon, "you've been coming here for a while now, and I've watched you grow in ways I didn't expect. When I first saw you, I didn't know what I could offer. But now," he turned to Liam, his gaze steady, "I've been thinking a lot about this, and I want to offer you something." Liam looked at him, confusion flickering in his eyes. "What do you mean?" Robert hesitated, as though finding the right words was harder than he expected. Finally, he said, "I know I'm not your family, Liam. I know I'm not your father, but you've become like a son to me, and I've thought long and hard about it, and I want to give you the chance at a new life, a real life, with me." Liam's heart skipped a beat. He wasn't sure what Robert was suggesting, but the weight of the moment pressed down on him. "Robert, Liam began, unsure of how to respond. His emotions surged inside him, a mix of disbelief and hope. Robert continued, his voice low but firm. "I want to adopt you, Liam. I've seen what you've been through. I've seen how you carry the weight of your past. But I also see the person you're becoming. You deserve a chance to have a family. Someone who will stand by you. Someone who will guide you. Someone who will love you, not out of obligation, but because they want to. And I want that for you. I want to be the one to give it to you. Liam sat there, stunned. The words felt like a lifeline thrown to a drowning man, something he hadn't expected but desperately needed. He had always dreamed of having a family, of being seen, of being loved in a way that wasn't fleeting or conditional. But never had he imagined this. Never had he thought that someone like Robert would look at him and offer not just sympathy, but a real chance at a new beginning. I don't know what to say, Liam said, his voice trembling slightly. You don't have to say anything right now, Robert replied gently. Just think about it. I'm not asking for anything in return. I don't want to change who you are. Liam, I just want to give you the opportunity to have a future, a real future, one where you're not alone. Liam's mind raced. It wasn't just the adoption itself. It was the idea of belonging, of finally having someone to rely on. He had spent his life feeling like an outsider, drifting through existence with no real place to call home. And here, in this moment, Robert was offering him something that felt like salvation. But the fear, the doubts, crept in. I'm scared, Robert, Liam admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm scared of what it means. Scared of trusting someone again. I've been let down too many times. Robert reached out and placed a hand on Liam's shoulder, offering reassurance without saying a word. He didn't need to. His gesture spoke volumes. And for a moment, Liam felt the weight of his fears begin to lift. He wasn't sure what the future would look like, but he knew he wouldn't be walking it alone. You don't have to decide now, Robert said softly. I just wanted you to know the offer is there. The door is open. Liam, whenever you're ready. For the first time in a long while, Liam felt a flicker of hope ignite deep within him. The prospect of a new life, a life with Robert as a father figure, felt like a dream he never thought he could have. It wasn't about forgetting his past, about erasing the scars of abandonment and loss. It was about building something new, a future that was his own, shaped by the choices he made, not by the circumstances he was born into. The weeks that followed were filled with moments of quiet contemplation for Liam. He had always been independent, relying only on himself for survival. But the thought of having a family, of being part of something bigger than himself, tugged at his heart in ways he couldn't ignore. Robert's offer, though daunting, felt like a promise of something he had longed for but never believed possible. And then, one crisp morning, as the first snowflakes of winter began to fall, Liam found himself standing in front of Robert's modest but warm home. He had made his decision. He was ready. As Robert opened the door, his face lighting up with a quiet smile, Liam stepped inside, feeling a warmth that was both unfamiliar and comforting. The house, though simple, was filled with the kind of warmth and love Liam had never known, a kind of peace that settled in his chest, making him believe that, perhaps, he had finally found a place where he belonged. I'm ready, Robert, Liam said, his voice steady with newfound resolve. I'll take the chance. I want this. I want a family. Robert didn't say anything at first. He simply reached out, pulling Liam into a hug, his arms strong and steady around him. Welcome home, son, he whispered. Liam closed his eyes, allowing himself to feel the warmth of Robert's embrace. And in that moment, he realized something profound. It wasn't just the offer of adoption that had changed him. It was the understanding, the acceptance, and the love that came with it. It was the promise that, no matter what came next, he would never have to face it alone. Thank you for joining us on Empathy Stories and witnessing Ethan's incredible journey from solitude to a loving family. We hope his story has inspired you to reach out and connect with those around you, recognizing the profound impact a single act of kindness can have. If you found this narrative meaningful, please like, share, and subscribe for more uplifting stories that celebrate the human spirit. Until next time, may empathy and compassion guide your interactions.